Hi there, welcome to a new series that we've got called Dispatches from the Dugout. We're the Vickers MG Collection and Research Association, and hopefully you're aware of us already. We're a registered charity here in the UK that specialises in military history and firearms related to the Vickers machine gun. We have an existing site, Patreon, YouTube channel, all of those things, but we wanted to bring something a little bit different, some more conversational material between a few of us that can look at items in depth, take questions from people like yourselves, the audience, start to just debate things a little bit more and take things from the collection as well. So that's what this series is. I'm Rich Fisher. I am the founding director and trustee of the collection, set up in 2011 from a collection that I'd formed. And now I do a bit of everything, some of the writing, some of the authoring, but we have around 40 members, a few trustees that help look after that, make sure we run along the right lines as well. And the guys joining me today.
Hi, I'm Matt Yates and I'm the Chief Ops Officer for the collection. So my main role is that of, I do a lot of design and artwork. You'll see some of the books and publications that we do and some of the infographics that we have online. I also work closely with event spaces and museums, and I endeavour to get us as many sort of events as we can get. And I do that very closely with...
Hi, I'm Tom Riley. I am the Operations Director and Trustee of the charity. So I deal with stuff on the charity side of things, and also all the projects that we're working on, which we will be looking at throughout this series.
The idea of this series is that we take each decade of the Vickers machine gun's British service. So came into service 1912, goes all the way through to 1968. And by separating things into decades, we're going to be able to look at items from the collection, the small arms that were in service with the Vickers, alongside the Vickers, and then debate some sort of theoretical what if, start to debate the detail of machine gunnery and how that develops as well. In doing so, and by taking it into those decade spaces, we'll talk about how the Vickers develops across that timeline as well. Although the Mark I gun, which we've got here, is what enters service in 1912, it's the Mark I that exits service in 1968 as well. But so many things change that they don't look like the same firearm. So we'll talk about that. As I said, this is the Mark I that entered service. This is our 1914 example. It's one of the earliest in the collection. Behind me is a typical uniform and some equipment of a machine gunner of the First World War, the machine gun corps. So we'll talk about like the generation of that as well. Wearing a hood and pistol order and things. And you should see some of these things change throughout the series. Each episode will have that different theme. If you've got any questions about what you see and we don't address it on camera, then please do comment, send us notes and everything, whatever questions you have. So in this series, we're going to be looking at the Vickers, of course, as it came into service, but it replaced the Maxim in service. It also fought against the Maxim. So we'll look at that in a little bit more detail. We'll look at actually machine gunnery, what that is, and we'll do that through the lens of actually what if it didn't exist? What if the Vickers hadn't been in service? What if machine guns weren't around in the same way? And then we'll pick some items from the collection, from our wider collection in this episode. So we've got something very special in that we have a Victoria Cross to the Machine Gun Corps that we'll be talking about and sharing with you. We're going to be talking about our limbered wagon project that Tom's been working on, and I'm going to pick out some individual pieces from that we can identify to the people as well. Welcome to the small arms section of the episode. In this particular episode, we're going to take a look at the Vickers and the Maxim, and how the Vickers replaced the Maxim and what we've got. But first, just as a little caveat to what we're saying, is when we're talking about small arms, we're going to use the terms gun, weapon, firearm, interchangeably, because there's some contention depending on which particular sector of the wider audience you're in as to whether you call it a gun, a firearm. Some upsets the artillery, some upset shooters. We're probably going to get it slip of the tongue at some point. At the end of the day, we talk about machine guns all the time, so referring to other things as guns, submachine guns, all of those things is going to happen. Please forgive us on that. Don't feel like you have to pick up every moment of it in the comments. We like the comments, but try and avoid that one if you can. So what we've got, guys, is a Vickers, a really early one. This is the one that we've had alongside us. This is L311, so it's October, November 1914, so 311 of the Vickers that were being made, of 120,000 odd over their life. So it's a really early one. Earlier ones exist, but this has all the characteristics of what we want to demonstrate. Alongside it, we've got an MG08. So this is the German Maxim, which is the same function and design as the British Maxim that the Vickers replaced. Right. And most of the bits on it are the same as how the British would have been using them. Differences in the sights and stuff, which I'll talk about in a moment. But this, when it comes into service, replaces the Maxim in service. And this is the light gun. Okay. We've been moving them around to get them here and set up, and
that's why I looked at you with the puzzled expression.
Yeah. So it is the light gun. That's what the AL stands for in the serial number.
Okay.
So the AL 311, it's the light machine gun that Vickers were producing, as opposed to the Maxim, because they were producing them both alongside. The MG08's made in Germany, so the British didn't make them, but the Germans did pay royalties to Vickers, Sons and Maxim for the machine guns they were making. Right. And it's one of the ways that you sort of keep an eye on how many they're making, because if they're paying their royalties, the British government's just got to ask Vickers, Sons and Maxim, well, how many have they paid for?
Yeah.
So it's about a third lighter than this. And in doing that, they had some function changes around it as well. So the basic system is a crank system. So I'll use it on the Vickers. Make sure that bottom shutter's open. Is that it's here. It doesn't go straight back. It actually rotates a crank using the crank handle. The Maxim that it replaces actually pushes that forward. So the crank handle is it moves forward twice to cock it, back twice to cock it. They turned it around, and in doing so, they made this narrower as opposed.
So it's inverted.
It's inverted basically, yeah. So when the crank on the So when the crank on the Vickers goes this knee of the crank, the joint there goes upwards and forwards, whereas on the Maxim, there, it goes downwards. And you might say, well, why even bother? Why wasn't that obvious when this was being designed in the 1870s? Well, it just wasn't obvious.
But by doing that, it allows them to make this smaller and narrower.
What they've also had to do is close it in more. So this is solid on the bottom. Right. It stops dust and ingress and stuff like that. And there's a hole in the front where the spent cases come out. This one has a shutter that you have to shut to stop the dust and everything going in. And that's really frustrating, because if you don't open that before you use it, the gun stops working. Which, if you cock it now, it just does that. Yeah. And you have to do things to make it work. Both bout fed. They're both the same, like that. But very, very few component parts are transferable as well. So sights and things, and I mean from the British, not necessarily from the German. German to British Maxims don't have compatible parts. They're made just slightly differently, but you can convert a German Maxim to fire the British 303. And when we were needing machine guns at the start of needed more machine guns in 1915-16, we did that a bit.
Is that with the parts? Is that a imperial to metric?
I don't know, to be honest. I don't know if it's imperial to metric or it's actually just machining. Everything needs a bit of work to do it, but you can see this is a deactivated example. These are both deacts, actually. They're not the ones we'll have on the range, but the lock is a bit different as well. One of the key characteristics for when Vickers took this is they wanted something that you could strip without any special tools, whereas that needs a screwdriver and a hammer and things to drive pins out. So, what else do you notice about it?
So, bigger... the cross piece at the back, smaller. Yeah. It seems like on the Maxim that it's that big because the body is that deep, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's the Revelli or something that there's actually a bit of a gap because they just couldn't be, didn't make it all that. But you can get your whole hand in there. Yeah. And you can press the thumb piece.
So the grip is actually different. Actually, your hand grip So when you're that, and then you don't have to put your fingers over.
Yeah, so you're not placing these two fingers over the top on the Maxim.
You don't need to.
Because you don't need to.
Is there a lot? Because of course the crank is going forwards when it fires, whereas it's coming back when it fires here. I mean, obviously it comes back again, but is there more of a gap?
No, it seems to be more of a bit.
A larger gap.
It's different.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay. Of course,
it's just
done
different.
that.
Say when the Vickers comes into service, it's extremely light. Extremely light. It's lighter. Yeah, it's lighter than the Maxim, and as we'll talk about, the weight differences are about 3 kilos. Right. It's significantly machined here. All of these lightning pieces just to keep it, but that takes so much more time. And if you want to produce lots more, you need to reduce this amount.
And they do reduce that, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, we'll see that on the later guns.
So
as well.
can I just clarify then? So for the Maxim, very early war Maxims, or even pre-war, pre-First World War, Vickers' Sons and Maxim are building these weapons for the British and the Germans.
No, for the British, right? And then they built them for the trials for the Germans, and then the Germans say, "Oh, actually, we want to build our own. We'll pay you royalties."
Right. So they're building their own guns in Germany, but they're paying Vickers and Sons and Maxim.
And then the Russians do the same with the 1905.
Right.
So this is a proper early. Although it's adopted the DMG-08 in Germany, I think this is the 1901 model Maxim, if I remember rightly. I have to refer to some of the books, but it's the 1901, and then this is a derivative actually of a 1908 commercial design that Vickers were making, but they'd already they'd adopted that at that point.
Right.
They never went any lighter. The Russian Maxim is a derivative of the 1905 iteration. Right. So that whole period of 10 years, after the 1900s, the Vickers are just trying to do stuff.
And they've cornered the market then, largely, really, haven't they?
Largely. The machine gun market at that point is Maxims, of which Vickers, Sons and Vickers own most of that. Maxim drops away in, I think it's 1908 as some of this stuff happens. So he stops being a director. He passes away in 1916. Yeah. So he's very well aware of the First World War. But he passes away having seen this expand. And one of the reasons Vickers are able to do the changes they are is because the patents have expired and Maxim's rights. Some of the patents are sort of expired, and they could change enough on it then, or I think it's the royalties expired. They could change enough on it, basically, they didn't have to pay Maxim for the production of these.
Or his estate.
Yeah. So we'll go into more detail on these, on the function of these and things at the range. If you're on YouTube watching this, then because of the way that YouTube monetize some of these videos, we can't show automatic weapons fire. So we'll be showing all of those extras and things on the range over on Patreon. So head over there and subscribe, and you'll be able to see all of the content that we're producing. If you like what you're watching and you want to see more, leave a comment on YouTube and we'll give one person from those comments each episode a month's free subscription to Patreon, where you can access all of our archive and the firing videos that go alongside this series. We'll also, because we don't want to leave you out, any patrons that leave comments on the Patreon site for that video, we are going to select one from across the series and send you a copy, wherever you are, one copy of the Pride of the MGs book that we retail. Obviously, terms and conditions will apply, so please have a read of those before you enter any of those competitions. So this is our segment where we start to do a bit of counterfactual, a bit of exploratory history, and ask the question, what if, about something? And in this episode, covering those 1910s, it's the First World War is clearly dominating the decade. But how would that have gone if machine guns, particularly the Maxim and the Vickers, hadn't existed? So what if the machine gun just hadn't existed in the same way? How would that have affected doctrine, tactics, development, organisation, the war as a thing, really? What would it have looked like without machine guns? So a bit of context to it is that machine guns have been sort of the arms race in the 1900s. Okay. So everybody thinks about dreadnoughts, the big ships and that sort of thing, and that's what the arms race was at that point. But arguably, the Maxim had come along, or the British had taken a new version of the Maxim in the early 1900s, and started to look at how the Vickers company had started to look at how they could improve that and how they could develop it. So this is slightly out. The question goes back a little bit further. It had been around since the 1870s, really, machine gunnery properly.
So is this with the introduction of things like the Gatling gun?
Earlier, so that's much earlier
than that.
Yeah, much earlier. So that's 1860s, 1850s, 1860s. Maxim come along in 1870.
Right.
And I think what I really want to understand, by exploring this is if those changes hadn't happened in the 1900s, as the army changes in 1908, and all these things are happening pre-war period. What would the First World War have looked like? What would it have looked like without machine guns being ubiquitous?
Because I think it's one of the things you do associate with the First World War. I think you don't need a huge knowledge base. You can look at the First World War and you've got artillery, gas, machine guns. It's all those kind of things that come to the fore. But I think that early on in the war, in 1914, how prevalent were the machine guns at that point?
Well, everybody thinks the Germans had a lot.
Right.
They used them differently. They used them much more than we did. They had the Maxim, as we've talked about, the same sort of base design as the Vickers, and we had Maxims at the same time, so we didn't have them everywhere. And in the British infantry regiments, we just had 2 per battalion,
right.
And the cavalry had 2 per regiment. So they weren't everywhere. They were a specialist unit attached to headquarters. And as the war developed...
So, sorry to interrupt. So because the First World War isn't my strength, so would they have been called up to a particular action or a location? If they'd been needed, would they have then called up those guns rather than having them right the way across the front kind of thing?
Well, they were... So if you've only got 2 to play with, your commanding officer is seeing that as sort of a battalion-level asset.
Okay.
That is going to go to the main point that it's needed. So in an attack, off to a flank, fire in to support that attack. In a defence, key point of defence. And we see some of that in the 1914 actions at the bridges and Mons and those sorts of pieces. So we can take this in 2 forms. We either take, they don't exist altogether, or they're just not mass produced. Machine guns aren't taken, to the extreme that they become. And like you say, become prevalent through the First World War. So your point about, we think about trenches and tanks and stuff, would that have even existed if it wasn't for machine guns?
Well, my understanding is, I'm not sure about yourself, Tom, but my understanding is that the machine guns led to the development of the tank. Is that correct?
Well,
or is that a generalisation?
Well, the tank is the anti-machine gun.
Right, yeah.
It's like...
So to be able to move forwards through machine gun fire, you develop the tank.
And machine guns are sort of the anti-cavalry. We think of aircraft and anti-aircraft and tank and anti-tank because they're nice, easy, short words. But tanks are anti-machine gun. Machine guns are anti-cavalry, potentially.
Yeah, the constant new development, counter-development, new development, counter-development.
So if we stop that development early on and just say, nobody expands machine guns or introduces them everywhere, what stops?
But do you need trenches? Trenches to the extent that there were in the First World War.
Possibly not in the same way.
Whereas you didn't, jumping forward 20 years to the Second World War, you have all those machine guns, but you don't have there's a lot of other things that go into why there wasn't a static front there. But
well, it's manoeuvre, isn't it? It's armour and manoeuvre that you can hark back to in a way of saying, well, the machine guns, they stop manoeuvre because they mow down cavalry, or they can't.
You're denying an area to your enemy.
So you're ending up with a stalemate, aren't you? Because you've introduced machine guns into the battlefield, which is why we see these long periods of time where nobody's moving anywhere.
And then you need artillery to counter that stalemate. And then you need to work out what the breakthrough is. So actually, do we end up with just like a quick war?
Has it been stretched so long because you've introduced these new weapons, the tank, the machine gun, possibly gas? It's extending that.
Everything's trying to make the war end by Christmas. Yeah. It's always that war end by Christmas thing. So if we increase the number of machine guns, we'll win quicker. But the enemy are just doing the same.
Yeah.
So you're just creating either static war or heads butting against each other, that trench warfare.
Yeah.
So machine guns are responsible, for so many casualties.
Yeah.
Not like directly and indirectly. And we'll talk about indirect as a different term in a moment, but directly responsible for casualties because they kill people.
Yeah.
But indirectly responsible for casualties because they stop people moving, so then the artillery gets them.
Right. Okay.
So because you'd lose that movement.
Yeah. So that's one of the next questions I would ask then is, or one of the next points I would make is about the doctrine of machine gunnery at this point then. So as we've discussed previously, where these days we're kind of led by what we see on films, and we don't see how machine guns are used particularly accurately in films. We see somebody firing over a parapet at the advancing soldiers and so on and so forth, but we don't have any real understanding. There's no explanation of how machine guns are used, what the doctrine is for using those machine guns. And that's starting to be developed as much as the guns are themselves.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lag in that.
Yeah.
And one of the pieces of research I did a few years ago was how machine gun doctrine develops. And there's another sort of counterfactual here of actually, if you hadn't have had the ammunition production.
Yeah.
So the thing that controls machine gun doctrine development is not the development of the technology in the machine gun, but it's the availability of ammunition that works in the machine gun. So when we first go to war in 1914, they're not sustained fire weapons. Yeah. They are just, they've got 7,000 rounds and that's it. And you expect all the engagements to be over in 10 minutes. And you're done. And therefore, if you're not doing sustained fire, you can't really do overhead fire. And if you can't do overhead fire, you can't do indirect fire. So you've got these doctrinal developments that are because of that, that are happening elsewhere as well. So you need in artillery.
I'd never thought of it in those terms.
Yeah.
Yes, and because you've got more ammunition, you can have more guns.
Yeah.
You can't do that otherwise.
So are we physically stepping up ammunition production in 1914, 15?
Yeah, you are.
We're considerably stepping it up. Yeah. Right. Okay.
So largely, actually, they'd have probably just switched to artillery.
Yeah.
More reliance on
machine
artillery.
guns weren't available, you'd have done it with artillery.
Because there was an understanding, wasn't there, that it was rapid rifle fire, replicating rapid rifle fire with less weaponry. But really, it comes into its own as its own weapon system. It's not just rapid rifle fire. It's not replacing men. It's creating a weapon that it can do a different job.
Leading on from that, the next development of air warfare. If you didn't have the machine gun, are the aircraft, which would have been developed anyway, are they then being continued to be used as they were at the start as just observation for the artillery?
Potentially, yeah, and just shooting at each other with pistols.
With pistols and dropping grenades on people.
Yeah. So let us know what you think of that conversation, what you think would have happened if the machine guns hadn't existed. Join us on our Discord channel. Now, all patrons can get access to that. Go on to Patreon, find the pinned post, go over to Discord. We'll start a thread up to be able to talk about this in a lot more detail. From the collection, this is our segment where we get an opportunity to look in more detail at some of the items that the association has within our collection. And we're over here at our limbered wagon, Tom. So can you tell us a bit more about this?
Well, this is half of a limbered wagon. This is the rear portion. This is what came in as general service wagon. When the Maxim was replaced by the Vickers, the Maxim was transported on the Mark III machine gun carriage, which was specific for the Maxim. Maxims were still in use, but we needed a general service wagon to carry either or Maxim or Vickers. And we're currently in the process of restoring this. The hind section here is about 80 to 90% complete. What I have in my hand here is the axle and flanges of the fore portion, and we've got a lot of the metal work already. We're working through that. But hopefully in the next 1 to 2 years, we're going to have a full limbered wagon to show to everybody.
So you've been working on this at our working days, haven't you?
I have, yeah. And our volunteers have been coming in really, really helpful, cleaning up all the metal work and finding some great markings. This axle's dated 1918 VMC, which we're not quite sure who that was. It's not Vickers.
Pretty sure it's not Vickers.
We're pretty sure it could be the Vauxhall Motor Company, possibly.
A very early thing for them to do.
Yeah. But if you know, please leave a comment. We'd love to find out who made all these individual parts.
So this is the area sort of where we keep up some of our First World War and some of our early stuff, because actually the limber's full at the moment. It's actually set up for a 4-portion, so it's got all the ammunition boxes and everything in it. But what we have here as well is quite scarce. Just take it out the case and it'll fall backwards. Look. But this is a machine gunner's mask. Now, it's obviously sort of it's not a respirator. It's not anything like that. It's actually a sort of method of concealment. If you're in a Vickers, in a pillbox with a Maxim or a Vickers machine gun, the only bit they can see is the bit that's through the loophole, and therefore the white of the face, this is pre-cam cream or anything like that, you put your mask over. And then these are the ear loops, and my head is clearly too big because it won't quite reach my ears. And then you tie it round your service dress cap and put it round the brow of that, or you could put it under so it goes under the brow of the cap as well. Loop your ears round that. So machine gunner's mask, quite a scarce piece to have, certainly scarce to survive. And what's quite nice is this is numbered MGC 60588. And I'm going to pop that back up there, because what I've looked up on my phone is the database that we have. And this database is the Machine Gun Corps database that Graham Sacker has built. There are about 200,000 members of the Machine Gun Corps throughout its existence, 15 to 22. And Graham has captured around 140,000 of those in this database so far. There's no other central database like it for any of the regiments or corps. And we host this now through the National Archives Discovery Catalogue. So I'm able to look up 60588, and it belonged to Leonard Henry Coxall, who was a private when he had that number, born in Burton-on-Trent, enlisted the 3rd of July 1916. I wonder what inspired him to enlist at that point. You know, we've got the Somme having come into action. He originally joins the 28th Battalion of the Royal Fusiliers, transfers to the Machine Gun Corps on the 3rd of October 1916 into the infantry, and he's mentioned as being in the 4th Reserve Battalion, which is one of the training battalions based out of the Machine Gun Training Centre, which is all centred around Boughton Park. He gets discharged January 1919 from the army, but he's actually discharged to commission. So that means he goes from being a private to a commission on the 19th of October 1918, just before the end of the war. And he's given a post-war service number. He's got an officer's record. He actually goes into the 2nd Officer Cadet Battalion, and he's got no overseas service. So this never left the UK, which is probably why it survives. Some of these items just don't survive. That's going to not do very well if it goes overseas, is it? And it's probably not going to come back. So one of the reasons that this particular example survives is he'd have been in training. This would have been stuck in his pack. As an officer, he wouldn't have got that out, and would have existed in his pack until he was discharged to commission, came home, stuck in a cupboard, and keeping it for Halloween, whatever he was doing, and it survived, and thankfully is now in our collection on display. Occasionally we'll put this on a mannequin head so people can see how it loops around the ears and stuff like that. But just a great example of a piece of personal equipment that we're able to track down and trace to a particular person. So let's go and have a look and see what Matt's picked out from the collection. So Matt, let's have a look at what you've picked out.
Absolutely. So we'll just let Tom get sat down. So obviously, this is a fantastic collection of stuff, but we do need to point out that this doesn't live with us. It's not part of the collection. It actually belongs to Sir Andrew Graham, who's one of our trustees, and it's his grandfather's Victoria Cross. Now, Lieutenant Reginald Graham was fighting in Mesopotamia in the First World War in 1917. Mesopotamia is today largely Iraq. When he was wounded in an action for the Battle of Istabalat in April 1917, moving his section of guns up to the front. So he was awarded the Victoria Cross because of that action, but mainly because he was injured. He was wounded 5 times as he moved forwards, in the hand and the cheek and the forearm. One round went through both legs, which counts as one wound, because it's one bullet, which is just incredible for me to get my head around. And he was only a young chap. But what we have in front of us today is obviously in this box here, we have the Victoria Cross itself. This isn't a replica. This is actually his Victoria Cross. It's still with the family. There was only 7, I think.
7 Machine Gun Corps Victoria Crosses. And one of the things we've been doing is, we remember those dates throughout the year and put a little bit up about each individual. But this is the only one of those 7 that remains in the family. It's also the only one that was Mesopotamia. All the others are Western Front.
And along with it, we have some absolutely incredible artifacts. So we've got his mother's scrapbook here, which, as you can see, is huge. It has his ribbon on the front, and she put this together as he went through the war. She put this scrapbook together for him.
So we have all this digitized. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but we will share a fair amount of this on Patreon as well, as part of that wider Machine Gun Corps archive that we have.
Yeah, so I won't go through this in depth because it's, as you can see, it's quite delicate and I don't want to damage anything. But what we did do, quite fortunately, is we've published the book, which is available through our shop. If you go to vickersmg.blog/shop, you'll find it there. Basically it's a copy of his diary, which is here. And as you can see, this is also extremely delicate. And it's got some wonderful, wonderful watercolours in. As part of his officer training, he would have been taught sketching for observation and recce. And he's got some wonderful paintings in here. We've also got his sketchbook, which shows far more of those. And they're also included in the book. We've reproduced those in the book. This is his training book, which again is in incredible detail with fantastic illustrations of all the gun parts.
This is interesting because it talks about that, that transitional period as well, Maxim to Vickers, because the majority of this book, the technical elements are the Maxim machine gun. So this is all the Maxim internals. And then it's the last few pages that are the Vickers. So when he went through the course, the machine gun officer's course, he was still being taught the Maxim. But then goes into the Machine Gun Corps, which is largely Vickers.
And he's illustrated this all the way through. I mean, there's just so much of it. It's absolutely incredible. And placements, dugouts, you name it, it's all in there. And again, we've replicated this in the book. So everything's there for you to see.
Hopefully those pieces that we've covered off in this collection piece shows the diversity of not only the technological articles that we have or have access to, but the personal stories as well. The equipment, the weapons, they all are so much more valuable than just understanding one element. The technology or the engineering is fascinating, and the arc of this series will be how a gun goes from the sort of Edwardian age through to the nuclear. Very sort of steampunk-esque weapon is still existing through all of those decades, but it's the people, it's the stories behind it that give flavour.
I think we'll be covering that in depth throughout the series, because that's one of the things that now that we're knowledgeable about the technological aspects of the gun. It's the people that made it, the people that operated it, the people that had to move it, but also the people that were on the receiving end of it, which is something that I think gets overlooked, and that's something that we certainly want to be looking at here. You'll find in the book as well that Lieutenant Graham writes about the men that he's with, which is again an incredible insight into how they were all functioning together, how he was functioning as an officer with other ranks, and when he lost them, and all that kind of thing. And it's an emotional journey, but it's a fascinating journey, and it's a a really fascinating campaign to look at because it's something that really has been overlooked, I'd say, Mesopotamian campaign.
I think it's one of those parts of the world that conflict happens, repeats, happen. You know, it's a difficult one to understand. You know, a lot of these places, but some of those names are very familiar to us from more recent news as well. So hopefully you've enjoyed our discussion, and it's made you think about how machine gunnery is used, how this period works, how the Vickers exist, etc., etc. Hopefully it generates questions for you to share with us as well. And we asked some of those on Patreon a while ago, and we've had some back, haven't we, Tom?
Yeah, from our Discord, we have a question from Colcol1672. For the Dugout, my question relates to how the Vickers MG was employed in the colonial campaigns as opposed to the Western Front. For example, during the African and Middle Eastern by cavalry, light horsemen, mounted rifles.
Okay, so we've talked a bit about the Mesopotamia, that Middle East piece, and interestingly, the machine gun corps did exist. It was around the world, wherever the British Army were. On the Kellett certificate, that is a certificate that all serving machine gun corps people got at the end of the war, like demobilisation, discharge, and we've got a fair few of those on Patreon, actually. They're all nicely individually named. It has the battle honours of the machine gun corps, in which one is East Africa. Jumps out straight away. And it's a good example of that colonial period of service. You had East African machine gun companies, the different armies had their own versions of the machine gun corps as well. In Africa, you had the German East Africa, you had what's now Namibia areas being fought over. And they worked in a similar way. Organisationally, they didn't really change to a machine gun battalion like they did with the machine gun corps. They stayed as machine gun companies, so they're a bit more independent. There was mixed troops, so British troops and natives, local troops, with their different rank structures and things as well, but working alongside each other. In some areas they were combined. You had cavalry units, like you said, like Colin asks, but you also had light armoured motor batteries, motor machine gun service, armoured cars, machine gun corps motors, different organisations. There's a lot more mobility. And the your horses had to move infantry as well. The infantry guns too, but they did that more with pack saddlery. So again, more mobility. And then they had trains as well. So armoured trains. We won't fit one in the shed.
We could try.
We'd fit the shed inside one.
Yeah.
We'd have to change.
We could make the shed into an armoured train.
So a bit different, a bit more mobile. Yeah. What else have we had, Tom?
Jake Thorner, did gun crews use boiled water from the jacket to make tea?
Wow. Would you?
With the side of asbestos? Probably not.
It's funny, isn't it? That's one of those recurring myths, and we've got it on the website. So I'm going to grab my laptop, actually, because there's a couple of quotes that I think are just quite interesting, in that you say yes and a no. So one of them, George Coppard. So George Coppard produced this book with a machine gun to Cambrai, and it's readily available in so many different formats. I think our library, we've got 4 or 5 different versions of it. And it says, must mention here that Captain Graves in Goodbye to All That, that's quite a famous poem, refers to machine gun crews indiscriminately firing off bout after bout to boil their water. This suggests that machine gunners who fancied a cup of tea or a shave simply loosed off a couple of bouts. In fact, this was not the case, as tea laced with mineral oil would taste pretty ghastly. Also, machine gun crews who seemed to be firing indiscriminately might well be engaged on barrage fire, and infantry officers would not necessarily be aware of that. So that's a no, they didn't. No. Why would you drink it? It still might taste better than the stuff coming up in the tins.
Not saying it never happened.
No.
Not as a regular
but then
occurrence.
Dolph Goldsmith, who authored Grand Old Lady in No Man's Land, and then I co-authored the second version of that, which was Pride of the MGs, which we sell. So when you're buying your copy of Reginald Graham, you can buy a copy of that. He had an interview with a veteran, or cites an interview with a veteran, Corporal John Young of the 12th Machine Gun Company, during the Battle of the Somme in July 1916, and later at Ypres, Belgium in 1918. We used the water-cooled Vickers machine gun when we were when we would run short of water for tea, we would frequently empty the barrel jacket of the gun. The tea was a wee bit greasy, but tasted all right. So that's a yes, they did.
I think you'd have to be desperate for a brew.
Yeah.
And in those circumstances, you probably are desperate for a brew. So
another one on the myth page of the website is, did they urinate in the water jacket? So you decide whether that was before or after they'd made the tea.
Quite.
But yeah, so great questions. We want to see more of those. We want to see those develop over the course of the series, and in preparation for future series maybe as well. So if you're watching this and you think there's not an opportunity, there's always an opportunity to ask us questions. Head over to Discord, do so. Join us on Patreon as well, and tune in for the next episode. So thank you very much for watching, and it's a bye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
See you later.
Thanks, guys.